everyone, it's Dr. Kate. I wanted to welcome you all to week 3 of our summer session course. This short video is going to give you some tips for succeeding on your next exams. I've graded all the exams that have been submitted, and I hope that you take the time to look at the feedback and also look at the document you submitted, because on some of them I left you some comments that hopefully will help you out. I've got a teaching assistant today. This is my small cat. Her name is Little Cat, and she's wearing a comb, so don't make fun of her. Anyway, the exams on the whole were really good, and the difference between exams that got an A and exams that got C's or D's really had to do with how you used evidence to support your points. So when I'm asking you to complete the assessments, what I'm looking for is to see that what you've understood from what you've read and what's come out of the discussion board. So in order to successfully do that, I need to see you engage the text with some depth. So on a lot of your exams, I said something like, build your answer around the evidence or around a quotation. And that remains sort of my best tip. I posted a document last week under Unit 1 and that is called the 4I system, and it goes through how to use evidence to support your text. And I just wanted to talk through it for those of you who didn't take, didn't read it or struggled with it a little bit. So the first I is for introduce. All quotations need to be introduced. You don't just want to drop it in there with quotation marks and let it sit by itself. So the introduction doesn't have to be anything fancy. Most introductions are something like John D'Amelio argues, comma, and then at the quotation. Or John D'Amelio writes, or John D'Amelio says, or John D'Amelio defines, right? So just that's what counts as an introduction, just a few words. If you want to integrate evidence in a more sophisticated way, which I never do, by the way, I'm strictly a D'Amelio writes kind of introducer, but you can also integrate it into your own language and have chunks of argument, or chunks of quotation, but the easiest way to do it is to introduce it with the author's name and something about how what he writes or says or explains or explores or tells us that, something like that. So that's the first I, is introduce. The second I is integrate. And integrate means that you want to make sure that it integrates with your language. So when you're done sort of introducing and putting your quotation in, reread the sentence and make sure it's grammatically correct. That's all that means. That wasn't a huge problem on any papers, so I'm not going to dwell on that I. The third I is identify, and that's where you put the citation. So for an in-text citation, which is what most of you did, the sort of trickiest part is the punctuation at the end. So I saw all kinds of things on y'all's paper. Some 2 periods, the period inside the quotation mark, and then the page number outside. There are a lot of things that I saw. And that makes sense because it's hard to remember these tiny details. So first, I highly recommend using a citation guide to double check how you're doing citations. So my favorite is at a website called owl.purdue.edu, owl.purdue.edu. And it has really good guide to how to use any citation system. I don't care which kind you use, I just need you to use it correctly. I'm just going to explain it to you real quickly. The way that a sentence works, right, is it starts with a capital letter, or I guess, sort of the mirror effect's hard. It starts with a capital letter and it ends with a punctuation mark. So when you use a quotation, right, you've got your quotation marks, and then when you close the quote, you put parentheses and the page number in there, and then a period after the parentheses. And that period tells you that page number is connected to this sentence. And if you have the period somewhere else and the page number is just sort of like hanging out on the page and you don't really know what it connects to. So that's how I remember how to do it, right? So it goes quotation, quotation mark, parentheses with page number, period. That's it. So take a minute to double check how you do those citations because those are really easy points that you don't want to lose. And then finally, and this is the most important I, this I is interpretation. And interpretation is how you explain how the evidence that you're using connects with your main point. So for a lot of for the definitions on exams, the easiest thing to do is probably to say to put it in your own words, right? So Lila Rupp argues that Lila Rupp uses the term same-sex sexualities because, and then quotation where some quotation about why she uses that term, and then following that should be an explanation in your own words, right? That says, in other words, Rupp uses this concept because it helps group-like activities without adding an identity-based understanding onto it, or something like that, right? So that putting it in your own words is the most important part of the writing, right? It's the single most important part. It's where it's the writing through and explaining what this quotation means that you can tell if you really understand what you read. And honestly, I didn't do anything more than reading comprehension until like my 4th year of graduate school. It's really hard, especially with some of these more challenging readings, to even know what the main point of the author is. So focusing on that, I think, will be really helpful. So that's the 4I system, and I wanted to go over it for those of you who want a little extra support in writing. Also, I wanted to remind you that the Writing Center is open for tutoring both online and in person this summer. So if you just search the UMBC website for Writing Center, it'll pop up and you can make an appointment. So if you want to take a little time this summer to get better at writing, that's another good way to do that. My final tip going into the next unit from an exam grade perspective is make sure that you look at the discussion board questions and the exam before you start the work for the unit. This will help guide your reading and note-taking so that you can be answering the questions as you go along. The next couple weeks you have a lot of written work due in a short amount of time, so that's one of the reasons why I give you all the prompts at the beginning so that you can really focus in and do the work as you go. So those are my tips. If you have any questions or you want to talk about your work in particular, I am absolutely open to phone calls, to googly video chats, to however it is that you would like to communicate in person. So if you're interested in that, just send me an email at drabinska.umbc.edu and we'll set something up. All right, happy reading, and I'll see y'all soon.